If we cannot remove the woman, we remove the child's name.
File it. Both jurisdictions.
여자를 제거할 수 없다면 아이의 이름을 제거합니다.
접수하세요. 양쪽 관할 모두요.
There are women who survive heartbreak quietly and call it strength. Zara Okoye was one of them. For years ago, the man she loved chose a folder of lies over her face. She didn't fight. She didn't beg. She walked out of that penthouse in Seoul, crossed the world to London, built a life with her bare hands, and raised a daughter who had never once known what was missing. 8 months ago, in a hotel lobby in New York, that daughter looked at a stranger and called him Appa. And Jin Tae-Hyun, the man who had been certain about everything and right about nothing, dropped to one knee and understood what 4 years of certainty had cost him. He earned his way back. Saturday by Saturday, question by question, one school art show at a time. He earned it. But there are people who watched him build a family and decided that family was the one thing they could not allow. They had taken his wife once through lies. Now they were coming for his daughter's name, and this time, Zara was not walking away. This time, she was standing in the middle of it. This is the story of what happens when the woman who needed no saving decides to fight, not because she has to, but because some things are worth the ground they cost you. There is a kind of peace that is not happiness, but holds better. It does not ask for anything. It simply is. Zara had built this over 4 years in London, and in the 8 months since New York, she had been careful not to disturb its foundations. Tae-Hyun came every Saturday. He showed up at the park gate exactly on time, never late, never asking for more than the Saturday itself. When Amara spotted him, she ran with the full commitment of a child who has decided this person is hers. She called him Appa. It had startled him the first time. Now it seemed simply correct. On a bench some distance away, Zara sat with both hands around a coffee she had stopped drinking. She watched her daughter run toward the gate. Her expression was not warm and not cold, something harder to name. The particular face of a woman watching something she wants to trust, but has not yet fully decided to trust. The light was pale gold, autumn thin, falling fully on the man at the gate and her daughter's bright coat. Zara sat slightly in shade. She did not know yet that someone else was also watching. Madame Kwon Mi-suk lived in the same Gangnam apartment she had occupied for 30 years. Dark lacquer furniture. A single orchid on a side table. Morning light cutting through floor-to-ceiling windows in sharp, controlled angles. She had learned about New York 3 weeks after it happened, not from Tae-Hyun, who had not spoken to her since Manhattan. She had learned from someone inside his organization who still reported to her out of old loyalty. She was not a woman who panicked. She thought carefully for several days before acting. She had not destroyed the marriage out of simple preference, though preference had been part of it. The arrangement, quiet, undocumented, built between old families, still existed. Tae-Hyun did not know about it. A wife from outside their world, a child, these things changed a man's priorities in ways impossible to predict or control. Her hands rested flat on the lacquered table. A phone lying face down beside them. A second cup of tea sat untouched, steam still rising. The orchid stood in soft focus behind her still hands. Nothing in this room moved without being told to. She poured a second cup and began, carefully, to think about what came next. Choi Byung-joon had been patient for 2 years. It was his professional identity, the quality that made him useful to people who needed things arranged without noise. He sat behind his glass desk in a minimal Seoul office, reading a document without moving. No personal items. No warmth. He looked like a man who had just understood something useful, his hand resting near a phone he had not yet picked up. When he heard about New York, the reunion, the child, his first feeling was something close to amusement. He had set pieces in motion expecting fracture. Instead, he had produced reunion. But interesting failures had their own uses. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, phone to his ear, looking out at the Seoul skyline as dusk came in. City lights beginning in the purple hour. His posture was easy. His expression was the expression of a man proposing something entirely reasonable. He was not a man who threatened children. This was a principle. But a man who had only recently found his daughter had vulnerabilities that a childless man did not. The Singapore proposal was ready. A legitimate surface. A cage underneath. He made the call. They met in a private room in a Seoul hotel, round table, 2 men, the Han River through tall glass behind them. Between them, spread documents, 2 untouched glasses of water. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. Tae-Hyun asked the questions he always asked. Byung-jun answered each one with the easy competence of a man who had prepared carefully. On the surface, nothing was wrong. Below the surface, everything was. Then at the end, standing to leave, Byung-jun said something casual. The way certain men say the most important things as if barely remembering them. I heard your circumstances have recently changed. A child. In London. Tae-Hyun went still. Not visibly. My circumstances are my own. Of course, Byung-jun said pleasantly. Men with children see partnerships differently. He smiled and left. Tae-Hyun stood in the hotel lobby, completely still, while it moved around him. Marble floors. Suited people. High ceilings. None of it reaching him. His expression had not changed, the professional composure was intact. But something underneath had shifted, the way a foundation shifts before anything visible cracks. He understood, then, with cold and absolute precision, that the meeting had never been about Singapore at all. He called Zara that evening. Someone knows about Amara. A man named Choi Byung-jun. He said something today that was not quite a threat. Zara was quiet. Not quite, she said. He is testing. Seeing how I respond. Whether there is something to press. And is there? He was honest. I don't know yet. If the Singapore proposal is what I think, he wants access to my financial structures. What I don't know is whether Amara is separate leverage or part of the same play. Zara said, so we are back to this. He heard what was underneath and did not flinch. I wanted you to know before you found out another way. A silence. Thank you, she said. Carefully. Not warmly. Genuinely. After the call, she sat for a long time on the sofa, the phone in her lap, knees pulled to her chest, a small involuntary closing. The lamp was on. London going about its night outside the window. She looked at nothing in the middle distance. Not despair, not quite that. The quiet of a woman who has been in some version of this place before and is now measuring the shape of this particular one. Seo-rin was living in a small apartment in Mapo. Modest. Clean. Functional. The space of someone who moved in temporarily and stayed longer than planned. She sat at a bare kitchen table with a cup of tea she was not drinking. Overcast daylight from a single window, flat, gray, Seoul winter light that showed everything without warming anything. She had spent 8 months telling herself a story. The conclusion never changed. She had done what was necessary. On the nights when the story didn't hold, she thought briefly about a child who had grown up without her father. She did not think about it long. Then the phone on the table lit up. MK on the screen. Her hands went very still on either side of it. She had not answered yet. The gray window light fell flat and cold across her hands and the glowing screen. Her face carried the expression of someone reaching for a justification they have almost finished building. She answered because she was not finished. She only knew the feeling, the same one she had carried 4 years ago when she built the folder and told herself it was right. Some feelings, once learned, are very difficult to unlearn. The legal letter arrived on a Tuesday. Zara was at her desk when her lawyer called. The letter had been filed in a Seoul family court the previous Friday. It challenged the legitimacy of the surname Jin on Amara's birth certificate. Unauthorized appropriation of a family name. No paternal consent. She listened without speaking. Her pen was in her hand, but she did not write anything. Her posture was upright and completely controlled, the body language of a woman processing loud news without giving it the satisfaction of a response. When Adiz finished, she said, "Who filed it?" She already knew it was not accidental. After the call, she picked up her phone and typed a message to Tae-Hyun. For words, because 4 words had a history between them. They filed a challenge. His response came in under 3 minutes. 1 word, saw it. Then, 30 seconds later, I am handling this. You will not face it alone. She read it twice. Her thumbs were still over the screen. The phone held slightly tighter than necessary. Her face carried an expression not quite relief, but close to its edge, the careful private moment of a woman deciding whether to believe something she wants to believe. Tae-Hyun filed a formal paternity acknowledgement in Seoul within 48 hours and instructed his legal team to identify the party behind the challenge. It took them 4 days. He sat at his desk late, laptop open, documents spread beside it. Not typing, reading with the particular stillness of someone who has found what they looked for and is now sitting with what it means. Blue-white screen light and the amber glow of Seoul at night. The specific moment when investigation becomes truth, contained, quiet, and heavy. The instructing party traced through a holding company to a smaller firm. One director in common across 3 entities. He followed it until the name arrived. Madam Kwon Mi-suk. He stood at the window, phone to his ear. He had not spoken to his mother in 4 years. She cried. He listened. He was not looking at the city. His eyes were turned slightly inward. His posture had changed, something in the shoulders different, something less certain than the composure he had carried his whole adult life. At the end he said, "I need to ask you about Madam Kwon." The silence that followed told him more than any document could. His mother told him in fragments, the way people tell things they have been ashamed of for years. 15 years ago, Madam Kwon had facilitated an introduction, old money, quiet preferences, capital when no one else would provide it. The terms were never written down. When Tae-Hyun married Zara, Madam Kwon had managed it. When it became clear that Zara was shifting something in him, she had acted. His mother spoke into the phone, not looking at anything in the room. Her hand gripped it too firmly. A family photograph was partially visible on the shelf behind her old, framed, a different time. "You knew," he said. "Not all of it. Not what she would do. But enough." She did not deny it. He returned to his desk. His laptop was open. The financial document still on screen. His hands rested on the desk, but not on the keyboard. He was not reading anymore. He was understanding. The city had gone fully dark. The only light was the screen and the lamp. His face carried something new, the expression of a man who has just learned that his empire was built partly on someone else's deliberate betrayal of him. He flew to London that weekend. Zara met him in a quiet cafe near the flat, small, warm-toned, morning light coming through fogged windows. She had tea. He had nothing. He told her everything. Not because it was comfortable, but because the man he had been 4 years ago had withheld things from himself by choosing not to look. He was trying, with some difficulty, not to be that man. Both of them leaned slightly forward, not a comfortable coffee, but the posture of 2 people delivering and receiving difficult things while sitting close. Zara's hands were around her cup. Tae-Hyun's hands were open on the table, unusual for him. When he finished, she said, "You are telling me this because you want me to know. Not because you want something from me." "Yes," he said. She nodded once. Both sat back slightly. Something large had been said and the room had quietly changed around it. She looked at him steadily, unhurried. He held her gaze without blinking. The fog at the window had thickened. Not silence as distance, silence as weight being redistributed between 2 people learning, slowly, to be on the same side. Amara's Saturday that week was different. Zara did not hand Amara off at the gate and retreat to the bench. She stayed. She sat in Winter Park light, paler now, barer trees, the pond catching what thin sun there was. In the middle distance, Tae-Hyun crouched beside Amara at the water's edge, both of them looking at something below the surface. Zara was in the foreground, watching. They were unaware of her. She thought about the airport bathroom. Yellow paint and Fela Kuti on a small speaker. She had not built this life to be alone. She had built it to be sturdy. That was the difference. At the pond edge, Amara reached up and took his hand without looking at him. She was pointing at something with the other hand, explaining, narrating, being entirely Amara. Tae-Hyun looked down at the small hand in his, then at the duck she was describing. His expression was the expression that comes when something you have been carefully not wanting too much simply arrives. The light on the pond was pale and cold and clean. From the bench in the shade, Zara watched Amara take his hand. She did not look away. The investigators' full report arrived on a Thursday evening. Tae-Hyun sat at his desk with a thick printed document open before him. He read every page. The Seoul night pressed against the window. A glass of water beside him untouched. He read the way a person follows a thread that leads, at every turn, somewhere worse. The consortium. 3 families. 12 firms over 15 years. Madame Kwan as facilitator, introductions, returns, the goodwill of people who preferred things arranged without appearing to arrange them. The same model every time. Capital provided, influence maintained, nothing written down. 2 separate threats had become visible. One directed at his firm. One directed at his family. He closed the document. He moved to the window, phone in hand. His posture had changed. No longer still, the contained energy of a man who has finished processing and is now deciding. The document was still open on the desk behind him. The city outside looked different now. Not something to observe. Something to move against. He began making calls. His voice was quiet and precise. The decisions had already been made. The question now was only sequence, which move, in what order. The second legal notice arrived on a Monday morning. Zara sat at the kitchen table in the early morning light, reading the printed pages slowly. A cup of tea had gone cold beside her. Through the open kitchen doorway, Amara's school backpack sat on a chair, the ordinary and entirely innocent evidence of a school morning still to come, completely unaware of what was in Zara's hands. The filing was London now. An application to have Amara's birth certificate corrected, the surname Jin removed entirely, on the grounds of reputational harm to the Jin family name. Reputational harm to the Jin family name. Amara was 5 years old. Zara stood at the kitchen window, phone to her ear, looking out at the Peckham Street below. The morning was gray-bright. Her back was slightly turned from the document on the table. Adiz said, "They want you to settle. Change the name. Go away quietly." Zara looked at the street below, at the ordinary city that had held her for 4 years. "No," she said. Her posture was the posture of someone who has already decided before the conversation ends. A woman who has heard "go away quietly" and has simply decided not to. She called Tae-Hyun that evening. This time she was standing at the window, not sitting on the sofa, not curled with her knees drawn up. Standing, one hand resting on the window frame, phone to her ear. The city below was lit and fully moving. Her expression was active, not just receiving information, but thinking alongside it, asking, pushing back where it needed pushing. He told her about the consortium report, about going public. His firm's name would be in the story. His early involvement, unknowing at the edges, but present. It would cost him. "You are willing to do that," she said. Not a question. "Amara's name is on a document that says it doesn't belong to her," he said. "What exactly would I be protecting instead?" After the call, Zara stood at the window with the phone in her hand. The city was the same city it always was, enormous and different. Her posture had settled into something she recognized, the weight of a decision that has just finished being made. Her reflection was faint in the glass, layered over the street below. She held the phone for a moment. Then she typed one message. "Then we do it together." They built the case over 3 days in Tae-Hyun's hotel room, the table transformed into a workspace, documents, 2 laptops, a legal pad covered in handwritten notes. Tae-Hyun on one side, Zara on the other. Between them, the evidence. Both leaning forward, pointing at specific things, annotating, cross-referencing. Focused and purposeful. The warm, unsentimental intimacy of 2 people working close together on something that genuinely matters. It was the first time in all the years they had known each other that they had sat on the same side of a table. Zara prepared her court statement. Tae-Hyun briefed the journalist, a financial reporter who had been trying for 2 years to break a story on informal investor cartels. Late on the 3rd night, the work had paused. Both sitting back, the quiet of 2 people who have said everything that needs saying and are now simply present. A phone between them on the table. The lamp turned low. The hotel window dark. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "No," she said. "Then, are you?" "Yes," he said honestly. "The right kind." The kind that means you are doing the right thing. She almost smiled. Good night, Tae-Hyun. The story published at 6 in the morning, Seoul time. By 9 it had been picked up by 2 international financial outlets. By noon the consortium name was circulating in Seoul, Tokyo, and Singapore. By evening, 2 of the 3 families had issued denial statements. The statements, by existing at all, confirmed involvement. Madame Kwan did not appear publicly. Her lawyer called once and was told there was nothing private left to resolve. Byung-joon withdrew the Singapore proposal that same afternoon without explanation. In her Mapo apartment, Seo-rin read the story 3 times. Curtains half drawn. Gray Seoul daylight around her. She had finished reading but had not moved. She sat looking at the screen with the expression of someone who has just seen their own story told from the outside for the first time. Tae-Hyun's statement was in the article, his full acknowledgement, his deliberate and public exposure of himself, and the cost he had chosen to absorb in order to make it happen. He had paid something real to tell the truth. She had spent 4 years telling herself a careful story about why what she had done was right. She closed the laptop and did not open it again that day. Adiz called at 8:15 on a Tuesday morning. Zara was in her kitchen in a dressing gown. Amara's school bag was on the counter. A bowl of cereal beside it. Pale, clear London morning light. Both filings, Adiz said. Seoul and London. Withdrawn. No conditions. The certificate stood. It was done. Zara stood very still. She had not cried in the airport bathroom 4 years ago, and she did not cry now. She let the held thing release, slowly, the specific release of a breath carried too long. Are we going, Mummy? Amara appeared in the doorway in her school uniform, bag already on her back, expression indicating full readiness. We are, Zara said. They walked to school the way they walked every morning, Amara slightly ahead, backpack bouncing, the walk a serious daily event. Zara watched from half a step behind. The Peckham Street was ordinary. Other walkers, a bus, a corner shop opening its shutters. Zara was not looking at her phone, just watching her daughter walk. The expression on her face was the expression of a woman who has fought for something and won, and is now standing in the ordinary aftermath of the thing she protected. Seo-rin requested a meeting through a mutual contact. Tae-Hyun agreed. They met in a quiet restaurant in Yeonggu booths, warm with tones, private. He was upright and contained across the table, the expression of someone who has agreed to listen but not to perform comfort. She was smaller in posture than her actual size. The table between them was bare except for 2 untouched glasses of water. She did not make him wait. I told myself I was protecting you, she said. Her eyes were down. I know that isn't fully true. I know what else it was. She looked up. I found out about Amara from the story. That she grew up without her father. Because someone should know, she said. It's the only honest thing I can do now. The restaurant light fell on her as if she had been placed in the specific light of being seen. Does it help? Saying it, he asked. Not yet, she said honestly. But it's still the right thing. He nodded. He did not forgive her. Forgiveness is not something that happens in a single meeting. But he had heard her. That was different. And it was something. Madame Kwan called on a Friday afternoon. Tae-Hyun's apartment was sparse, long clean rectangles of afternoon light on the floor, the bare quality of a space occupied by someone who had not committed to being comfortable. He stood holding the phone. Her name on the screen. He had not answered yet. His expression was the expression of a person deciding whether to receive a thing they are not sure they can receive. He answered. She spoke about his father, a chapter Tae-Hyun had never been told. His father had nearly destroyed himself through blind trust in the wrong person. She had been there. She had watched someone she loved lose everything. She had decided then, 30 years ago, that she would never watch that happen again. Tae-Hyun stood at the window, phone to his ear, posture very straight, his head very slightly bowed. He was not crying. He was containing. Zara was not that woman, he said. No, Madame Kwan said quietly. I know that now. You used my father's story to justify doing to my daughter what was done to my father. A very long silence. I know, she said finally. Old and heavy. He said, don't contact me again. He ended the call. He flew to London the following Saturday. At the park, Amara had brought a notebook. She had been drawing the ducks for 2 weeks and wanted his formal assessment of the accuracy. He sat on the bench beside Zara. She had stayed again, the new pattern, and examined each drawing with complete seriousness. "This one looks most like the big one," he said. "That is the big one," Amara said, satisfied. He held the notebook in both hands like a document of significance. A powerful man in an expensive coat, studying a 5-year-old's artwork. Zara watched him. Normalcy being built through exactly this kind of small moment. They sat for a while after Amara went back to the ducks, both looking outward, not at each other. "I heard the consortium families are being investigated formally," Zara said. 3 jurisdictions. "Yes. Your firm takes a loss this quarter. We'll recover by year's end." A pause. It was the right thing. She looked at him sideways. "I know it was." Amara called from the pond edge. He walked to his daughter. The light fell on them equally now. From the bench, Zara felt something in her chest, not quite ready to be named but, without question, there. The rebuilding was not dramatic. Real rebuilding never is. Tae-Hyun came to London twice a month. He rented a small apartment 20 minutes from the flat. Amara knew the address and walked there from school on days he was in the city, which she treated as a significant privilege. He learned her schedule. Which days had swimming, which had art class. That she ate scrambled eggs without complaint and fried eggs with suspicion. That she woke once in the night for no clear reason and needed someone to confirm the world was still in order. He knew these things because Zara told him. That was its own kind of trust. Most Saturdays they had dinner together, the 3 of them in the small warm kitchen of the Peckham flat. Zara cooked. Tae-Hyun washed up. Amara provided detailed commentary on both processes with the objectivity she considered helpful. In his apartment, a child's drawing had appeared on the fridge. Amara had put it there on her 3rd visit. Tae-Hyun had not moved it. The apartment was still mostly his. But the drawing and the ease in Amara's body said something had taken root. Not the life they had built before. Something new. Careful, unannounced, holding under its own weight. She called him late one night. Her voice was calm. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what you said in the cafe. About choosing the folder over me." He waited. "You were handed a system your whole life that said certainty was safety. When the folder arrived, you used it to feel safe." She paused. "I understand that. That doesn't make it right," he said. "No. But understanding is different from excusing. I've been holding the gap between what you did and why. I need to let go of it. I'm not forgiving the choice. I'm forgiving the man who made it. That man isn't who you are now." He said nothing for a long time. Seoul was quiet at 2 in the morning. He sat in his apartment, dark except for the ambient glow of the window, the phone just lowered from his ear, his hands still. "Thank you," he said finally. As if the words could break. "Don't thank me," she said. "Just keep showing up." "I will." The line went quiet. His face carried the undoing of a single important defense, a man who has spent his life managing his expression and has, just now, stopped needing to. Amara asked on a Tuesday evening mid-story, when she had decided the story was less interesting than the question she had been holding. "Appa," she said. "Why weren't you there when I was a baby?" He put the book down. She was looking at him with the steady, patient attention she gave everything, no judgment, genuinely wanting to know. He had prepared answers. None felt honest enough. "I made a mistake," he said. "A big one. I didn't ask the right questions when I should have. Because of that, I missed the first years of your life." "What kind of mistake?" "The kind where you choose to be certain instead of asking." "And I was wrong to be certain." Amara thought carefully. "Mummy says questions are always more honest than being sure. Your mother is right." "Are you sorry?" "Yes," he said. "Every day." She processed this with the patience of a child who doesn't rush. Then she said, "Okay," and picked the book back up. He read the rest. She fell asleep before the ending, her hand loose on the page. He sat beside her in the quiet, just looking at his daughter. He was simply Appa, both less and more than he deserved. He understood. Zara was promoted to senior director in the spring. She called her mother in Lagos. Her mother listened and then said, "Good. Then, and the man." "Which man?" Zara said, smiling in a way that was not always visible. You know which man. He's in London twice a month. He washes up after dinner. He stood in front of Amara's painting at the art show for 5 minutes like it was the Louvre. And, her mother said. Not yet, Zara said. Her mother was quiet. Then, building well is not building slow. You have been careful for 5 years. Careful kept you standing. But it is not the only thing a life needs. After the call, Zara stood at the window. She thought about the airport bathroom, the test on the sink, the 3 seconds in the mirror before picking up her bag and walking to the gate. She had known even then. She picked up her phone, typed a message. Are you in London this weekend? His reply came quickly, I can be. She set the phone down slowly. She had been careful for 5 years. She was choosing now not to be careful about this one thing. On a Saturday morning in April, Zara made breakfast while Amara explained a book she had read, A Girl Who Found a Door in a Forest that led to a different version of Tuesday. Tae-Hyun sat at the kitchen table with a coffee, leaning forward, completely engaged, asking exactly the right questions at exactly the right moments. The kind of listening a child recognizes as real and gives everything to. Zara stood at the stove and listened. She felt, clearly, what it meant to have built a life by choosing not to disappear. She had not needed saving. The life was complete, the flat, the work, the daughter, the steadiness. Tae-Hyun was not completion. He was addition. Amara finished the summary and looked at him. Do you think there are other versions of Tuesday? He considered it seriously. I think there might be other versions of any day, he said. Depending on what you choose to do in them. Amara thought carefully. That's a good answer, she said. Zara turned from the stove and looked at them, her daughter, and the man who had been late by 4 years and was now, undeniably, here. Open, unhurried, present. Breakfast, she said. They came to the table. Stay dangerous. Stay present. Stay,